On May 25, 2006, Miki Kanazaki was last seen alive aboard the cruise ship Island Escape. That evening, she and her ex-husband, Lonnie Loren Kokonis, enjoyed dinner, shared wine, visited a casino, and watched the show before returning to their cabin. It appeared to be a normal night, but what followed would later expose one of the most chilling crimes committed at sea. In the early hours of May 26, Kokonis claimed that he awoke around 4:30 a.m. and found Kanazaki missing. He waited until approximately 6 a.m. before alerting ship authorities. To investigators, he suggested two possibilities: that she had accidentally fallen from their balcony after becoming nauseous from wine, or that she had taken her own life, as he alleged she had previously spoken of suicide. His words and demeanor seemed credible, and the scenario initially appeared to be a tragic accident. Nearly 36 hours later, on May 27th, a passing vessel discovered Kanazaki's body floating in the waters off Paola, Italy. Authorities treated Kokonis as a grieving husband and allowed him to return to the United States. Yet, the truth would soon surface. Forensic evidence later dismantled his account, proving it was murder. Miki Kanazaki was born in Japan and moved to the United States with her family as a child. In 1995, she married Lonnie Loren Kokonis, becoming his third wife. At first glance, they appear to be a successful couple. However, those close to Miki soon noticed difficulties in the marriage. She confided in colleagues that Kokonis was controlling, particularly when it came to financial matters. By 2002, the relationship had deteriorated, and the couple divorced. Yet, their financial ties remained deeply entangled. They continued to share assets, including bank accounts and property, and they named each other as executors in updated wills. During this time, Miki's health began to decline. She developed severe arthritis that forced her to stop working as a paralegal, leaving her dependent on disability payments and investment income. Kokonis, still practicing as an attorney, retained the role of financial provider. In 2005, Kokonis married another woman, Amy Nguyen. Yet soon after, he left her and returned to live with Miki. Prosecutors later argued that this decision was rooted not in affection, but in financial greed. With nearly $1 million at stake, Kokonis positioned himself to benefit directly from Miki's estate. In 2006, Lonnie Loren Kokonis presented himself as a man seeking reconciliation. He told Miki Kanazaki that he wanted to rebuild their relationship, suggesting that he would work less and spend more time with her. To prove his intentions, he proposed a Mediterranean cruise, portraying it as a romantic gesture of renewal. For Miki, the idea of rekindling what had once been lost brought genuine happiness. To those around her, she seemed hopeful about a future with him. Yet, beneath this facade, Kokonis was executing a calculated plan. Known for being frugal and rarely taking vacations, his decision to embark on such a lavish trip was unusual. Evidence later revealed that before booking, he asked his best friend, a retired officer and private investigator, about cruise ship security, particularly regarding cameras. Prosecutors argued that this demonstrated deliberate premeditation. Kokonis carefully chose the Island Escape and specifically requested a balcony cabin, knowing provided direct access to the sea. The itinerary, requiring multiple flights before boarding in Spain, was also out of character, further indicating his planning. On the night of May 25th, after dinner and drinks, prosecutors concluded he strangled Miki and cast her body into the water. The turning point in the case came with the forensic findings and the involvement of the FBI. The autopsy performed in Italy revealed that Miki Kanazaki's death was not accidental. Her lungs contained no water, proving she had not drowned, and instead showed clear signs of asphyxiation. Bruising and hemorrhaging around her neck confirmed strangulation as the cause of death. Additional injuries, including suspected head trauma, further supported that this was a violent homicide, not a fall or suicide as Lonnie Kokonis claimed. Because Kanazaki was a U.S. citizen, the FBI joined the investigation, adding pressure on Kokonis. Although much of the case initially seemed circumstantial, investigators began piecing together stronger evidence. Recorded phone calls captured Kokonis coldly referring to Kanazaki as the body, displaying chilling detachment. He later failed a polygraph test, increasing suspicion. A major breakthrough came through Aiming Gwyn, Kokani's ex-wife. Out of fear, she had initially withheld the truth, but later admitted he confessed to planning Mickey's death during the cruise. Under immunity, she became a key witness. Combined with financial records showing Kokani's maneuvering for control of Kanasaki's $1 million estate, the prosecution built a case that exposed his carefully staged cover-up. Even after being indicted, Lonnie Kokani's criminal behavior did not stop. While awaiting trial behind bars, he allegedly turned his focus to silencing the most damaging witness against him, his ex-wife, Aiming Gwyn. Her testimony had become a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, and Kokani's viewed her as a direct threat to his defense. Prosecutors revealed that he attempted to orchestrate a scheme from inside the jail. He was charged with 2 counts of solicitation to commit murder and 1 count of solicitation to bribe a witness. According to reports, Kokani's approached fellow inmates with offers of money to either kill Gwyn or pressure her into signing a false statement recanting her earlier testimony. He allegedly promised $2,000 for her signature and much more if she were permanently eliminated. However, his plot backfired when one of the inmates exposed his plan to authorities. This betrayal added even more weight to the case against him, painting a picture of a man who was not only manipulative and controlling, but also desperate enough to orchestrate new crimes while already facing trial for murder. Although the solicitation charges were later dismissed after his life sentence, they solidified the perception of Kokani's as calculating and dangerous. Lonnie Loren Kokani's long-awaited trial finally began in 2020, years after his arrest, though proceedings were delayed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Taking the stand in his own defense, Kokani's denied murdering Mickey Kanasaki. He portrayed their relationship as reconciled and even claimed they were discussing remarriage. His defense attorney attempted to undermine the prosecution's case, suggesting that Kanasaki's skull fracture could have resulted from an accidental fall rather than strangulation. Prosecutors countered with forensic evidence that left little room for doubt. The autopsy confirmed asphyxiation as the true cause of death, while testimony revealed his financial motives and manipulative history. They argued that Kokani's actions were calculated, motivated purely by greed, and reinforced by his failed attempt to silence witnesses while awaiting trial. In June 2020, a jury convicted Kokani's of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of financial gain. 3 months later, Judge Richard King sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During sentencing, Mickey's brother, Toshi Kanasaki, delivered a powerful statement, calling Kokani's a cold-blooded killer and noting that Mickey ultimately had the last word. Her recovered body provided the evidence that sealed his fate. District Attorney Todd Spitzer summarized it best. Kokani's may have chosen a ship in a room, but justice chose his destiny. While justice was finally served for Mickey Kanasaki, another case would soon emerge in Canada, where the disappearance of a young actress exposed a far more personal and devastating betrayal. Shannon Medill Burgess was a 25-year-old Canadian actress and comedian living in Calgary, Alberta, when she mysteriously vanished in late November 2014. She was newly married and actively pursuing her dream of becoming a professional performer. In the year she went missing, Shannon appeared in short films including Ascension and Scared Stiff, small projects that highlighted her growing talent. Just days before her disappearance, she secured what was described as the biggest audition of her career, a rare opportunity that promised the kind of breakthrough she had long hoped for. On the night of Wednesday, November 26, Shannon spent time at a residence she shared with her husband, Joshua Burgess, located on Spiller Road, SE. A family member last saw her around 12:30 a.m. in the early hours of Thursday, November 27th. After that moment, Shannon was not seen again. When she missed scheduled plans with her family on Sunday, concerns quickly mounted. Those close to her knew this was unusual. On December 1st, 2014, Shannon was officially reported missing. Calgary was still recovering from a severe blizzard, further complicating the search. Her car and personal belongings remained at home, but Shannon herself was gone. At the time of her disappearance, Shannon Medill Burgess's marriage to Joshua Burgess was unraveling. Although she was newly married, Shannon had already made plans to separate from Joshua and move to Edmonton for a new job opportunity. Her decision reflected growing distance within the relationship. In the initial days after Shannon went missing, Joshua told authorities he was not overly concerned, explaining that Shannon often left town for auditions. To many people who knew the couple, Joshua appeared to be a supportive husband who encouraged Shannon's career ambitions. Her sister Erin even described him as phenomenal in the way he stood by Shannon's artistic pursuits. However, their marriage was far more complicated beneath the surface. Shannon and Joshua were in what they described as an open marriage. Shannon had a boyfriend, Ian Wallace, who later spoke to Dateline about their relationship. Joshua, in turn, was dating another woman, and this created significant tension. Shannon reportedly expressed a desire to close their marriage, wanting exclusivity, but Joshua resisted. Weeks before her disappearance, arguments between the couple intensified over Joshua's involvement with the other woman. This strained dynamic later provided investigators with crucial insight into the instability within their household. The disappearance of Shannon Medill Burgess left her family devastated and desperate for answers. Her mother, Lisa, admitted that as the days stretched into weeks, she began to fear the case might remain an unsolved mystery forever. Shannon's sister, Erin, described living with all-consuming fear, confessing that her darkest thoughts pictured Shannon trapped somewhere, locked away and being harmed. The uncertainty became unbearable for those who loved her. In the early stages of the investigation, Shannon's parents, siblings, and husband appeared united. Together, they stood before cameras at Calgary Police Service headquarters, pleading with the public for help in finding Shannon. Yet as time passed, doubts emerged. Erin later admitted feeling a deep sense of betrayal, accusing Joshua of intentionally keeping the family in limbo while pretending to share their grief. Investigators also uncovered troubling inconsistencies. Shannon's phone data showed movement in the alley behind the home after she was last seen, though no one reported seeing her. Joshua claimed he discovered the phone 4 days later, despite it receiving constant unanswered calls and texts. During the months Shannon was missing, he maintained an online dating profile and was observed in public showing affection toward another woman. 7 months after Shannon Medill Burgess vanished, her family's fears were tragically confirmed. In July 2015, Calgary police recovered her remains, ending months of uncertainty, but beginning an even darker chapter. Investigators moved in on Joshua Burgess after securing a search warrant for his phone. When officers arrived at the residence on Spiller Road, SE, Joshua initially refused to come outside. Detective Christina Witt contacted him by phone, and within the first 10 minutes of their conversation, his composure cracked. Overcome with emotion, Joshua blurted out a devastating admission. "I killed my wife." Negotiators worked with him for hours before he finally emerged. Before surrendering, he attempted to take his own life by slitting his throat, but he was rushed to the hospital and survived. Once in custody, Joshua confessed in chilling detail. He described how an argument in November 2014 had escalated, ending with Shannon's death. He admitted placing her body in a plastic bin that remained on their patio through the winter months. When the ground thawed, he buried her in their yard. His step-by-step account confirmed the worst suspicions. The missing person case was now a homicide, and Joshua was charged with second-degree murder. Court documents later revealed the deeply unsettling details of how Shannon Medill Burgess lost her life. In the early morning hours of November 27, 2014, she and Joshua Burgess were at home together. They had become intimate on the couch before an argument broke out. According to Joshua's account, Shannon insulted him during the exchange, telling him she regretted marrying him. The conflict escalated after a miscommunication between them. Joshua suggested what he described as angry make-up sex, but Shannon misheard, believing he had said break-up sex. She reacted with anger, expressing that she was disgusted touching him. These remarks struck at the heart of their already troubled marriage. Later, Joshua told investigators that his motive for killing her was disturbingly simple. He just wanted her to stop talking. He first pressed his hand over her mouth to silence her, then used his hands to strangle her. Not satisfied, he tightened the belt around her neck, ending her life. Afterward, he placed Shannon's body in a large plastic bin, leaving it on their patio through the long Calgary winter. Months later, when the ground thawed, he buried her in their yard, chillingly explaining he did not want her to leave. In December 2017, Joshua Burgess stood before the court and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, sparing Shannon's grieving family from reliving the horror through a full trial. Justice Pat Sullivan called the details of the case gruesome, painful, and undignified, underscoring the shocking nature of Joshua's actions. He was sentenced to life in prison, with no eligibility for parole for 10 years. During sentencing, Joshua addressed the court, offering an apology for breaking his vows and for the immense pain he caused. Shannon's family listened in silence, devastated by the betrayal. After months of supporting him, unaware of his guilt, Shannon Burgess's story is one of love, betrayal, and unimaginable tragedy. What began as a search for a missing woman slowly unraveled into the revelation of a brutal crime committed within the walls of her own home. For her family, the pain was compounded by the knowledge that the man they had trusted, the husband they had supported, was the very person responsible for her death. Joshua Burgess's confession and conviction closed one chapter but left lasting scars. The reality that Shannon's final moments were filled with fear and cruelty will never be erased from the hearts of those who loved her. Her family continues to grieve, holding on to memories of her kindness, laughter, and spirit, even as they struggle to comprehend the senselessness of her loss. This case stands as a haunting reminder that evil can hide behind familiar faces, and that the greatest dangers are sometimes found closest to home. Next, we have a murder case of a young nurse. Gail Mosby was born in 1952 in Natchez, Mississippi, the eldest of 3 daughters in a devout Catholic household. From an early age, she displayed a remarkable sense of responsibility, often caring for her younger sisters while excelling academically. Her dedication led her to graduate as salutatorian of her high school class, a reflection of her determination and discipline. Pursuing higher education, Gail attended Northwestern University, where she studied nursing and later built a respected career as a neonatal intensive care unit nurse. Colleagues admired her compassion and skill, describing her as both diligent and caring toward the most vulnerable patients. In 1981, Gail married Richard Mosby, and together they began a family. Their first son, Bill, was born in 1982, followed by Joe 3 years later. The Mosbys relocated to Hammond, Louisiana, in pursuit of Richard's business ambitions. When his tire business failed, the family returned to Jackson, Mississippi. In 1986, the marriage ended in divorce, finalized on amicable terms, with Gail retaining custody of her sons. 2 years later, Richard remarried. His new wife, Deborah, quickly developed animosity toward Gail, sparking disputes over custody, finances, and family boundaries. During the early 1990s, Gail also battled depression, recorded in her personal journal. On the evening of May 24, 1992, Richard and Deborah Mosby arrived at Gail's home in Jackson, Mississippi, to return Bill and Joe after a scheduled custody weekend. Gail's car was parked outside, but repeated knocks at the door went unanswered. Concern grew when there was still no response, despite the clear signs that Gail was home. Before leaving, Richard and Deborah notified the next-door neighbor, who possessed a spare key, about the unusual situation. Around 6 p.m., the neighbor entered the residence and moved cautiously through the quiet house. Nothing appeared disturbed until the bathroom door was opened. Inside, the neighbor was horrified to find Gail lying face down in the bathtub. She was unclothed, her head submerged in the water, while her legs hung awkwardly over the edge. Authorities soon arrived, and the scene presented the appearance of suicide. Pills were visible and personal writings, including a journal and note, added to that impression. Gail's neatly folded clothes nearby further reinforced the suggestion of a deliberate act. Investigators documented these items, and the coroner ultimately ruled the death an accidental suicide. This determination shaped the initial investigation, leaving lingering doubts unanswered. Although the coroner ruled Gail Mosby's death an accidental suicide, investigators soon noticed troubling inconsistencies. Retired CSI Charlie Smith, who examined the scene, recalled spotting small traces of blood in the bathtub water and a visible bruise on Gail's ankle. There were also marks on her body that suggested restraint, raising questions about whether she had been held down. A small abrasion across her nose added further doubt, pointing toward a struggle rather than a voluntary act. Smith focused on a detail he believed to be decisive: the shallow depth of the bathwater. It was only a few inches deep, far less than what would typically cause drowning. He argued that a conscious person's body would instinctively resist making self-inflicted drowning in such conditions highly improbable. Because no autopsy had been performed before burial, Gale's body was later exhumed to allow a closer medical investigation. Forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden conducted the independent review. He concluded that Gale had not drowned accidentally. Her windpipe showed signs of deliberate blockage, and her body lacked evidence of seizure activity, which would normally occur in sudden unconsciousness. Baden's testimony directly contradicted the coroner, affirming that Gale's death was the result of homicide. For months after Gale Mosby's death, the investigation took a decisive turn when Deborah Mosby's sister, Vicki Mordecai, approached the FBI. Seeking protection in connection with a separate matter, she revealed explosive details about Gale's case. Mordecai disclosed that Deborah had been actively looking for someone to kill Gale and had contacted her stepfather with that request. Eventually, Deborah was introduced to Billy Ray Ford, a man with a violent past and a reputation for criminal activity. According to Mordecai, Ford and Richard Mosby went together to Gale's house on the night of her death. Ford attacked Gale, pressed a rag soaked in solvent against her mouth to incapacitate her, and then drowned her in the bathtub. Afterward, the scene was staged to resemble a suicide, complete with pills, folded clothing, and written materials. Investigators confirmed Ford's background, which included a history of violence, lending weight to Mordecai's testimony. To strengthen the case, police equipped Mordecai with a wire to record conversations with Richard and Deborah. On tape, Deborah admitted knowing Ford and acknowledged hiring him, though she claimed the intent was only to intimidate Gale. Phone records showed repeated contact, establishing the conspiracy beyond doubt. As investigators pieced together the case, the motives behind Gale Mosby's death became clearer. Financial considerations played a central role. If Gale were gone, Richard Mosby would gain full custody of their two sons, which would end his child support obligations. At the same time, Social Security benefits for Bill and Joe would begin, easing the family's financial strain. Beyond money, prosecutors highlighted the personal animosity Deborah harbored toward Gale. Witnesses describe her as hostile and hateful, often expressing deep resentment about Richard's life before their marriage. Additional suspicion emerged when Deborah's former husband revealed that years earlier, their infant had drowned in a bathtub. Deborah had attempted to blame the tragedy on their older child, a disturbing parallel that investigators could not ignore. By October 1994, Richard, Deborah, and Billy Ray Ford were indicted for conspiracy to commit murder. The legal proceedings unfolded in dramatic fashion. Ford agreed to cooperate, testifying that Deborah had orchestrated the crime and that Richard simply followed her lead. In May 1995, Richard pleaded guilty to murder, acknowledging his role. Later that year, Deborah stood trial. She was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison, while Ford also received prison time. Deborah Mosby's capital murder conviction was upheld on appeal, confirming the jury's decision and keeping her behind bars. Yet, after serving 26 years, she was eventually granted release. Richard Mosby, who had pleaded guilty, and Billy Ray Ford, who cooperated with investigators, also completed their sentences and were released in 2021. Freedom, however, did not bring reconciliation. Gale's sons, Bill and Joe, chose to sever ties with their father, maintaining no contact with a man whose actions had been tied to their mother's death. The case gained national recognition, both for its shocking elements of family betrayal and for the way it exposed flaws in initial medical assessments. What was first believed to be an accidental bathtub drowning was revealed, through persistence and forensic diligence, to be a carefully staged murder. The complex blend of motive, conspiracy, and courtroom drama has made the case a subject of ongoing interest. Gale Mosby's story has been revisited in television coverage. Her legacy endures as a reminder of a devoted mother's life, tragically ended by greed and betrayal, but never forgotten.